Hello dear students, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Your English Teacher. I am Ritu Bhandari and today we are going to study the second chapter of Snapshots textbook. The title of the chapter is The Address by Marga Minko. In this video today, I am going to give a brief summary of the chapter and try to understand the context in which it is placed. The following videos will be line-wise explanation, text questions explained, short answer questions as well as long answer questions. Do visit them as well. So this is a story about the human predicament that follows the pre-war and post-war period of World War II. Mrs. S was a Jew, a rich lady, whereas Mrs. Darling, the other character, was a non-Jew. The daughter of Mrs. S, that is Marga Minko, had lost her house and her mother during the war, and now she has decided to come back to take her possessions from Mrs. Darling, an acquaintance whose address was given by her mother years ago. When she reached the house, the woman treated her with a cold reception, didn't allow her inside the house, and then let's see what does the narrator decide to do. Was she able to achieve for which she had visited? The address. Let's learn something about the narrator. Marga Minko was born on the 31st of March in 1920 in Netherlands. Her pen name was Marga Minko. Occupation was a journalist and wrote in Dutch language. Her real surname was Menko with an E, but an official accident switched the first vowel. Let us understand what is the context in which the story is placed. This is the World War II, and Nazi Germany blamed the Jews and the socialists for all the Germans' problems, and the Germans listened to the government and they started to hate the Jews. Then, pretty soon, life got really bad for Jews in Germany. The Nazi government made the Jews shut down their businesses, stay in certain areas, and wear yellow Star of David, so that they could easily be identified in the group. After the war broke out, the Germans took over other countries and put all the Jews of Europe into these ghettos. Pretty soon, the Germans started moving people out of the ghettos and into the concentration camps. The concentration camps were places where people who could not do work or were too old were put to death, and even those who were too young were put to death. This is the context in which the story is placed. And Mrs. S is the narrator's mother, who is a Jew, and she has been actually cheated by Mrs. Darling, who is a non-Jew and was looking forward to them never ever returning for their belongings. Mrs. S had given all her belongings to Mrs. Darling for safekeeping. After the war, Mrs. S had died, and therefore her daughter, which is Marga Minko, she had come over to this address to get her mother's belongings back. So let's understand what was the status before the war. This first visit, she made two visits. The narrator made two visits to Mrs. Darling's house to get her mother's possessions back. And then was the second visit, which was the last visit. What happened in this visit? Let's understand. The narrator's family was a Jewish, and Hitler was planning to kill all the Jews in Germany, Holland and Austria. It appears that the narrator was away from her home, right? We do not know if it was or not. She offered to help the narrator. We do not really know. And she had offered to help the narrator's family by carrying their household utensils, furniture, and all other valuables. In fact, she had no intention to help the narrator's family. All she hoped was that the narrator's family should die in the war and never return. The war was over, and when it was over, everybody except the narrator was deported or killed. When the war was over, the Jews were feeling safe in these countries, and Marga, the narrator, she decided to return to the house and get her mother's possessions back. And that house was Mrs. Dorling's house. So let's look at what happens in the first visit. The narrator traces Mrs. Dorling's number 46 address and goes to claim her mother's property. Mrs. Dorling refuses to give way. And she, in fact, doesn't even recognize the narrator. It was now evident that Mrs. Dorling had betrayed the narrator's mother. Marga was terribly pinched, hurt, and disappointed. She did not know what to do and felt betrayed. She was turning away to go when someone appeared at the window, and probably it was Mrs. Dorling's daughter, and she was maybe asking, "Mom, who's there?" And Mrs. Dorling must have given a very discouraging reply. That was how the first visit ended. Now let's look at the second and the final visit. The narrator, that is Marga Minko, grew impatient after a while, so she decided to visit Mrs. Dorling once again. When she rang the bell at the house, number 46, Mrs. Dorling was away. Mrs. Dorling's daughter welcomed the narrator. The daughter had no idea how her mother had looted the utensils and furniture from the narrator's house. Looted, in a way, she had been an opportunist and had offered to take care of her belongings till the war was over. But she had an ulterior motive. She never intended to give it back because she never expected them to come back from the war. Now, the daughter must have been told that her mother had bought these precious antiques in an auction. The daughter was so proud and of these utensils and furniture, the narrator decided not to wait for Mrs. Dorling. She leaves the house and she decides to forget the address, because she is full of emotions at this point of time, and for her, her mother's belongings had been severed of all the memories that were linked to her mother. So she decided it would be better to leave without them. She also justifies that her house is too small, but we as readers can realize in the beginning also her house had been small. So why would she have in any ways initiated the second meeting? So children, this whole story is a poignant story full of emotions and an example of human predicament during war. So I hope you understood the summary of the story. Next, do visit the next video, which is going to give a explanation of the whole text, followed by text questions and a video on SEQs and LAQs. I really hope you will be able to understand and benefit from all these videos. Take care, God bless you, and see you again.